Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week I'm going to be talking about a game that I beat on my channel a few weeks ago, Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake. And I will say this as I stated at the end of the game, Dragon Quest III is special to me because rather than go for the Final Fantasy VII remake aesthetic, they went for something a little more old school. They decided that they would reintroduce a popular game in about as close as the fashion as they could to the way that it was presented before, with a few quality of life changes. Some that I approved of, some that I wish they would have included that have been kind of standard to games recently. But overall, I mean, this game felt like Dragon Quest, and it should stay that way. And I'm guessing that this, because of how it sold well, if they do remake other ones, this is the method they're going to use for 1 and 2. This is the method they're going to use for anything going forward, because this is a game that I did not play because I did not have access to 3, because I think they were on like handhelds or other stuff, or the old consoles way back, and I wasn't a Dragon Quest fan until the PS2 era with 8. So being able to go back with Modernize to a game that is very retro and, somewhat difficult, in some respects very difficult to a degree, I was very pleasantly surprised. But, there are things that I wish they would have included, or there was just a stylistic choice that I would have preferred they not do, considering what, say, Dragon Quest 8 and 11, which are the most recent kind of modernizations of it. And modern because Dragon Quest 8 was 2003, Dragon Quest 9 was a 3DS game, 10 was an MMO, so of course that 14 or 15 year gap between mainline releases that weren't party-based focused like the 3DS one was, like 9, but you have to consider my viewpoint. Those are what I consider Dragon Quest now. 11 did so much good stuff for it, but I understand the reasoning for not going into that direction, but trying to kind of split the gap between this is what it used to be versus this is what it is now, and not trying to go the Final Fantasy method either of doing, just full-on action, because there is that ever-present threat that they're going to do that. And, I mean, that's fine if they want to do Muso games and whatnot, but I do think this should be popular enough because this is the standard for what Dragon Quest should be. But, take some changes and advices here and there. But as far as, plot, it's very bare bones. You don't even have a main character. You have a main character's dad, who is important, and they do enough to kind of give you the family arc. But the main character himself is a silent protagonist. You know my feelings on those. I'm not gonna retread how much I hate them. You already know it. But he is not even. He's not even the only silent protagonist. Again, we are going very old. We are going late 80s, maybe 1990 here. I forget the date it came out. Story was not a real big focus in these. This is gameplay focused Dragon Quest, which is fine to an extent if the gameplay is good. And let's face it, Dragon Quest has not changed in 35-40 years, so I'm kind of glad for that. The thing with 3 is you're tasked with facing off against Baramos, this denizen of evil, this lord of evil, lord of chaos, one of you fight your way to it, you get your party set up, you find some quests here and there, you go from town to town to town to town. Dragon Quest kind of works in a town of the day kind of setup, which is good and bad, but it also informs you that you have your basic setup for the main plot, but then you have your town specific plots, and it's kind of like a D&D session in a way. This is how I program D&D as a DM, so it's actually a good method because everything from town to town to town to town matters, not story or character wise too much, but here you have to go find a key in this tower, go do it. You have to do the thing that saves this town to go do it. There's this guy who's masquerading as a whatever. You go do it. Stuff like that. And you get a ship, then you get flight, then you find some orbs, which is, again, similar to 11 because this is the precursor to 11. 11 takes place in the same world, so they have the same orbs that you have to find in a different setup, of course. But it's the same. What is different is going after Baramos and then finding out he's not the main bad guy. You have the second bad guy, so it gives you another 5 or 10 hours to kill Zoma, but realistically it's like, oh, it's just a different bad guy, so let's kill him and do that. That's fine. And that's your plot. Pretty basic. Nothing I have to worry about spoiling because it's like, oh, a new bad guy, who knew? Like, whatever. We kind of figures that. But the gameplay takes center stage in a game like this, and thankfully, through the use of the planning place, Patty's planning place, and creating your own party, you have a lot of customization, and it even starts at the beginning of the game. And this is one of the things that I really like about Dragon Quest III is the vocational quiz, the personality quiz, because there are millions of personalities, and they all kind of inform your stat growth. Some are very, very similar to others with little tweaks. Some are very different, and they go from like 30 to 40% buff to, 20 or 40% decrease, depending on how badly or good you are. I went through a site like Neoseeker or Loop 8 or Game 8 or some site to keep my head straight with what there were. But there were so many. Thankfully, there's a guide to give you that in the game, so that if you ever want to change personalities, you can either do it via an accessory. So you gain accessories to say, hey, I want to do this, or I want to do that, I want to do that. And you can change your stat base, and you can do that. What I chose was, these are my basic tenets that I go by. I'm going to be a tough guy. So I went through the trouble of figuring out what questions I had to answer correctly to get to the thing that I needed to do, and then in that scenario, how did I do it? Because when you answer questions, you can either answer them nicely, you can answer them any way you choose, and they're very, very. It's kind of scattershot. There's a method to the madness to get you to different scenarios, but there are methods to going. You can either answer honestly based on your personality. You can answer randomly just to see what the fuck happens, or you can pick a guide like I did because I wanted an optimal playthrough to my playstyle, which was defensive, and go for that. So I went for tough guy, and that's what I ended up with. So I had to push 40 boulders, and it took about 10 minutes extra to do it. But it paid off in the end because my dude barely got hurt and die outside of some random death spells or bad enemy placements. So I was able to just tank because the rest of my party could not tank for shit because I had dual sages and a martial artist. They were not tanky at all. So I had to, my character had to be the tank, which I'm grateful for. If I went, I kind of went back a few episodes into it and then answered honestly, and I ended up getting, it wasn't Crybaby, it was something else. It wasn't the best one because I didn't follow the directions. I could have done that and gotten a better one, but it was, there are like 80% of personalities that kind of suck. So bear that in mind if you go random. You kind of want to pick the best ones. There's Vamp, which is all across the board is good. There's Paragon if you want to do a lot of damage. And then there's Tough Guy, which I did, which was all kind of defense. Or you can do Wit, which is Wit and Genius, which are, you can get Genius from a book. because you get books as items as well. And you get Genius, you can level up your MP and stuff as well. But you do need to worry about HP, defense, stamina, agility, all that kind of stuff, and luck as well, depending on the classes you get. So the classes are also important too. So not just the personalities and the list of personalities and how they level up, you also get your classes. Your hero, unfortunately, does not get to change, but at Patty's planning place, you can get, pre-selected characters, or you can create your own. I stuck with 3 characters, Velvet, Magilu, and Sai as a priest. So Sai is a priest into a sage later, Velvet as a martial artist, and Magilu as a mage into a sage. And it worked out pretty well. I didn't die a whole bunch. Later on, I got frustrated because I think this was still in the game, in the game space where you had to grind a lot to survive a lot. And there is one specific thing I do not like about the bosses near the end of the game that I will discuss. But by and large, not changing vocations worked out for me. So you can either do my method and stick with the classes or not. I found having 2 mages / sages gave me enough healing, because I had healing on my own as a tertiary benefit, because I was trying to just do damage or soak up damage. I was able to have spells that could balance the party. Velvet stuck with damage, and later on she was the damage dealer with Multifest. But you have things like Merchant, which gained a lot more gold. You had a Monster Wrangler, which was new to this version. You could get friendly monsters and, do Monster Arena stuff. That was a nice touch. So monsters, you have to kind of either find them via stuff on the world map. You have to, hide your presence, either with Musk as an item or with a thief's ability. So you have a thief who can do Padfoot or Nose for Treasure or, stealing stuff. I'm not really a stealing guy. I've said as much from Final Fantasy. I've been scared off of being a thief for God knows how long since then. So I didn't want to do thief either, but you could do warrior, sword and board kind of thing. Obviously the priest and the sage are kind of mandatory because you need to do magic damage, but you have some versatility at All Trades Abbey midway through the game to just, change your party around, and you lose some stats, but you gain many back later on by leveling up over again. So you lose about half your stat growth, but then you boost back up to whatever stats you gain, and you gain the spells or skills for that class. I mean, if I was to do this again, I could try a different setup and do that, but I think I'm good with what I did. I was very solid, and I was happy going through it very basic and doing fine. Traversal in the game was pretty fast until near the end, which makes sense because it's the end of the game. I felt that really the biggest drawbacks were some of the dungeons. It was the pyramid. The early pyramid, I didn't do this, but there's a golden claw that you could sell for a lot of money, but it forces you to take a step and get into a battle every step until you're out of there, and I didn't do it. I mean, why? It just doesn't seem worth it just for money. I ended up rolling in the dough near the end of the game anyway, thanks to the Monster Arena. So I did not find a reason to do the Golden Claw, and I never went back to do it. Never felt like I needed the money. In fact, I felt that I ended up getting all of the best equipment relatively easily, either through the Monster Arena, through chests, or through that. Chests and exploration were minimal, and I want to say I like the chest method, but I don't at the same time. Here's what I've explained it. Dragon Quest has this thing where they don't want you to buy everything in a shop every single time you shop. They prioritize getting enough in a shop to do what you have to do to survive and thrive. And then if you can buy better stuff, you can. some of the mages, like, they'll get the somatic staff really early in the game, and because of the buffs that the equipment has, you don't really need any better equipment if you're going to attack with them. Other staves or weapons have special skills that are like, use a electric attack in battle, or use this to buff party members, or try to instantly silence them, or shit like that. So you keep them and you do that and whatever, it's fine. Later on you get like a Sage's Stone, which is a full multi-heal for free, which end game is kind of mandatory, which I like. But it's one of those things where this game, unlike any other, forces a lot of chests that don't mean much. And it allowed me to not really care about getting chests and doing dungeon diving, and I felt that was a disservice to the game, because rather than get you better equipment, a lot of the times this game gave you junk and you just sold it for more money so that you could get more. While I understand that as a benefit to balancing out, we don't give you a lot of money for fighting dudes, here's a way to make your money back, it also makes trying to explore the dungeons very pointless, because if you follow a guide, you kind of know where the mimics are / the cannon boxes are. You know where the bad chests are, so you're like, I don't need this, I'll just leave. So there was a dungeon where I did like 1 or 2 chests, and then there was like 20 or 30 chests that I could have opened, and I said, nope, I'm just leaving, and I beat it in like 2 minutes. So that was partly because I chose to use a guide and found out that some of these were just not worth the trouble. The other reason for doing that was because this game does not have a random encounter toggle. This kind of falters in the biggest way possible, because other Dragon Quest games, recently starting with 9, going into the remake of 8 for the 3DS, and then 11, have been putting enemy encounters on the map. So much like Chrono Trigger and Xenosaga or whatever, Chrono Cross, you see the enemies and you can run past them, so they're not random. Or in, say, Bravely Default, or the recent Final Fantasy remasters, or the Pixel remaster, you can toggle random encounters. So if you played any of the randomizers, you can toggle random encounters. Instead of doing that, they've gone with their tried and true Dragon Quest. You have the Holy Protection. You just keep casting it, and then you go a little bit, and then you keep casting it. And then you use Padfoot, and you keep casting it. That becomes a problem, because it becomes a drain on resources, and it's just... like, I don't like recasting something to not fight a thing. I understand that from a Dragon Quest perspective, but I don't think it's a great use of time. But it's not nearly as bad as the very, very, very stupid, very annoying Zing system. If you know about Zing, you know how much I hate it, and you probably hate it yourself. The Zing spell. And they even have Zin spells in this version, which is even more annoying. So the Zing spell revives your party member, but there is a chance of failure. And when I say chance, I mean there could be 6 chances where you fail. And if you run out and your character can't heal anymore, you gotta leave, and then you gotta go to a church, and you gotta do the thing, and you gotta go... Life spell should be automatic. I know that that's part of the difficulty of old school Dragon Quest design, but it's a stupid spell that I wish they'd get away. Kazing should be the mandatory spell. You just cast it, they heal, and you go. If you want to do Kazin and then Kazing, one is like 1 HP or 10 HP or whatever, critical health, and then do full health the other one, that's fine. But having a spell that is like, you have a chance of failure, well, that means that the RNG is either going to be very nice to you or more than likely fuck you over. And when I'm trying to be the only person that's trying to stay alive because I have the defenses of a turtle and everybody else has the defenses of a wet napkin, it's kind of, you can understand why I'd be overusing it. So between random encounters not being a toggle driving me kind of up the wall. The need to level up quite a bit, because I needed to be like level 40 or 50 to deal with the game. I was about 45 to 50 when I beat it. Some people could probably low level it at like 38, 39, but it'd be a challenge. Like, I never felt like I was challenged too much, but again, it's just a hassle that, like, I know I'm here just to grind liquid metal slimes, and I'm trying to find equipment. I'm allowed to just toggle the game, right? I can toggle it and then leave at my leisure. And if I get beat by a boss, it's because I didn't level up enough. That's fine, But I've said this before. If you're not able to toggle, and sure, pressing holy protection every 20 steps is not a compromise. It's just another hassle. So I wish that, they would take a cue from other Dragon Quest games and just have enemies on the field, even in smaller scale spaces like these old school games have. There's still enough maneuverability to get around enemies, I think, even in the smaller spaces that this game provides, because they redesigned the dungeons, around having, less than straight linear movement. So that's just a personal quibble. That having been said, none of that is as bad as the end of the game bosses, because there are several bosses where they pull something that I've never seen before. At least I don't want to see again, and I hope I never see again. And it's kind of random which ones do and which ones don't, because the final boss didn't, but some of his proxy bosses in the boss rush did. And it's regenerating health every turn. Baramos did it. The Soul of Baramos did it. I think the Bones of Baramos did it. The Hydra did it, and he didn't. Or no, I think one of the Souls of Baramos didn't do it. But Zoma didn't. And it made his final boss fight kind of a joke. He was just pure damage, which he almost killed me, but it's like... bosses should not be able to heal. You already set them at a high enough HP. It's like, okay, you're basically telling us if we planned our parties entirely wrong, if we set our personalities wrong, if we don't have enough damage potential, either through whatever, and we don't have enough resources to cast heal and multi-heal, because you practically need multi-heal on 2 people to even hold up to the damage the bosses give, then you're giving them a regen of about 300 to 400 HP per turn. So you're essentially telling us if we don't out-damage the turns and deal with the damage present, you're fighting 2 different battles at once. You're trying to keep your party healthy, and you're trying to out-damage the opponent. So I found I needed to have, multi-fist as a mandatory just to beat Baramos. And at that point, I wasn't having any trouble earlier. So it's like, man, they really... it felt like a bullshit difficulty spike, because that doesn't seem like a challenge. The strategies for bosses in this game are not that complicated, but it's also like, either set their damage really high, or set their HP to go very, very slowly. Don't let them fucking heal, and do not let them fucking heal every fucking turn, please. Because if I don't do the 400 damage cap, I can't, do any damage. So it's like, what the fuck do I do? And or give them more minions or something. Give them more turns. Do something. I pulled that shit in a D&D, DM setting once, just to prolong a fight, but that was like the capstone fight of the campaign. This was 4 or 5 bosses in a row almost that were doing the regen boss trick. It was fucking bullshit, and I don't think I ever want to see that again. And I'm wondering if earlier Dragon Quest games do it, because I've never seen them do it since. So I don't know if that's something that they added to this version or was present in 3. But it is not something I ever want to see again, because it's a bullshit mechanic, because it really kind of, especially since I was doing as best I can to do 2 damage dealers, 2 buffers and healers, if I had set my personalities any less optimally, I would not have been able to survive either effort, doing enough damage or surviving the damage. So you can see why it doesn't seem very fair to give a boss an extra handicap that they really don't need. Just set their HP way higher. It would be annoying, but at least I would know, okay, I ran out of resources naturally rather than some bullshit arc, it's dumb. But in terms of, pathfinding in the game, I mean, I still love the game. I just felt that those random encounter, bullshit things, the zing spell, which is not going away. I know I'm not, but I'm not the only person that's probably going to bitch about it. But, or at least set, Kazin as some spell that you get a little later, or a little earlier in the game to offset it. Maybe Zin and then Kazin and then Zing and then Kazing, something like that. I don't know. But stuff that is ingrained in Dragon Quest that could be improved upon to change it, just to give... They already gave you enough quality of life in the game. I think they could give you a bit more, but without, without squashing the difficulty. Because at the end of the day, everybody gets to choose their method. Some people probably enjoy the fact that the bosses are really fucking hard to kill. Sometimes they love to shift around vocations and personalities on a whim and do a different thing and try different things. Everybody's different. And I don't know how they're going to do Dragon Quest 1 and 2, how different the mechanics are going to be. But the allure of, say, the spectacle of seeing these remastered in, HD-2D, the environments are very good. The sound design, the music is the music. I don't think Dragon Quest has ever been lauded for the best music design, because there's still songs that I've heard from Dragon Quest 8, so I'm guessing they originated in 1, 2, or 3, and they just reuse them forever, so whatever. But Dragon Quest has been built on tradition, so I get, I'm kind of barking up a tree of saying, quality of life can only go so far if you're trying to keep up the traditions still. But I like the fact that even with my quibbles, I still was like, this is a game I loved playing and I didn't want to stop playing. There are just some things about the design that I wish weren't the way they were and could be different in the first and second games, and I know that have been different in the other games going forward. So maybe this is just a Dragon Quest 3 issue and not a Dragon Quest issue. But would I recommend playing Dragon Quest 3 HD-2D? Absolutely. If you've never played it and you want a difficult-ish experience playing an old-school game with some quality-of-life features that may or may not help you, go for it. Just be aware that there are a lot of battles. You need to do a lot of battles because you need a lot of money and you need a lot of experience, and the game isn't going to hold your hand all that long. At a certain point the game takes its training wheels off and it kicks the fuck out of you. It will do that. So it is a difficult-ish kind of experience. But the way that they've translated an old school game without too much trouble into a modern-ish feel, without, bullshitting you into taking the step into, oh my god, we're everything and everybody's gonna love it. And, trying to do everything, at the end of the day, they knew what their audience was going to be. Someone like me or someone who hadn't played an RPG, but you knew, okay, I know what a Dragon Quest game is, or I've played a Dragon Quest game. This is what's in the box. We're not trying to get everybody on the planet to like Dragon Quest, because we know there's still a lot of people who like it. Last I checked, it was like 2 or 3 million sales, maybe even 4 at this point. It sold a lot. Dragon Quest doesn't need helping. They don't need to branch out into help other people. They know who likes Dragon Quest. And if you know what Dragon Quest is or have heard of Dragon Quest, you're getting what you're getting. The goofiness, the puns, the enemy designs, the character designs, all that fun junk. If you've played a Dragon Quest game, you know what you're getting. And, I don't regret playing it at all. I just think that you have to go in knowing that maybe change it up a bit to fit the more modern, quality of life, just a smidge more. And then, it gives us an option to avoid some of the weird traditions that they've kept up with. But that'll do for Dragon Quest III. So let's see what we talk about coming up soon. So in Spectre, a mystery show about yokai and demons and other weird shit. Okay, Final Fantasy IX. Sort of modern-ish, but not really modern anymore. 25 years since we've seen that. Speaking of a game that may or may not get a remake, I imagine it will. And then Mega May with Mega Man X and Mega Man X4. And then the anime rundown sprinkled in between. So, there we go. And I'll see you guys next week. Citizen Strife, signing off.